Hey everybody, welcome back to Video. So today we're going to continue the series on the MiSTer FPGA DE10 Nano project, and I got a fun and unexpected video for you guys this Sunday night because I wanted to recap the overall development process of the Nintendo 64 core in 2023. Additionally, I am an idiot, and for the first time in the 5-year history of this channel, I accidentally deleted a video I didn't mean to. Wednesday's 100% of all games booting video, I accidentally deleted that because I was not paying attention. So you're going to see a little bit more of Tooie footage here, but because that video is gone and this is completely different, you guys can continue to watch because it's going to be a fun time. But the idea that all of this has happened in the last 6 months has been incredible, and I know you guys have been asking to see a recap of the development process, so I'm going to be going through some of the earliest core footage I have for Nintendo 64 and talking about where the core started, how it got to where it is today, and where it's going to go in 2024. But again, getting Banjo Tooie booting on Wednesday, this was the last game out of the entire retail library to work. I was on Discord chat following along with the progress as people tested the last few games in both Japanese, Europe, and North American territories, and we found out that 100% of the games on the Nintendo 64 core would show some signs of life. That does not mean that all of them are going to be playable as far as beating them are concerned, but they are getting so much better, and there's dozens upon dozens of games you can play from start to finish today on the current core, and that is absolutely amazing. Again, I'm not sure how I deleted that video. I was trying to get rid of something different and I must have been on the wrong tab. But it has been an absolute wild ride to see the progress on this core. 6 months ago, it basically didn't even exist. There was one little tech demo running, but nothing of the Nintendo 64 retail library would boot in whatsoever, and now today we have 100% bootable games, and you can enjoy so many of them. They are running as good as Nintendo 64 hardware ever did, except in a few instances, and in some games you're actually getting faster support. Now, where it all started from outside of a few tech demos was Namco Museum right here, and that is because the first thing Robert coded in was the CPU implementation, and because this is basically just emulating classic Namco games, all it did was run off the CPU and would output a video signal. But going from something like that to Banjo Tooie here with all these insane reflective graphical effects on the floor, it is just wild to think that in 6 months we went from one game working that only utilized the CPU of the Nintendo 64 to something like Banjo Tooie, which is a late release by Rare, a developer known for doing some insane things with the hardware, utilizing the CPU, RSP, RDP, all of those different processors, including the TLB table implementations, which was just done this week as well. It is night and day different between Namco Museum and Banjo Tooie, but it's so amazing to know we got there. Or something like Super Mario 64. This was some of the earliest playable footage I was able to obtain from the core, and as we jump ahead, it got better. The polygons are in the right place, but we had the eyeless Mario phase of the core. A lot of people still miss Mario with having eyes, but here he is again, and this is when we started getting all of those VI implementations in. He got his eyes, we got different graphical filters. Or something like Yoshi's Story that for the longest time wouldn't boot and then would boot with this wild hollow mirrors effect going into game, and we found out within like 4 hours of it working that it was completable. This is what we did this year in these videos and playing around as testers as Robert released new cores. And then something like Banjo Tooie, again, the last game to boot, it has so many different security checks. It requires basically every possible implementation that the Nintendo 64 can muster, so knowing that we can actually see it playing is such a great sign for the core. But now we're going to talk about where it has to go from here, but I'll have some more demos of where we came from and where we are. But there's still things that need to be implemented in the core. The biggest one I think so far is LOD, or level of detail. It isn't used by many games, but in Super Mario 64, when Peach's portrait turns into Bowser in one of the areas of the castle, that is LOD being in the core and in the hardware. We don't have that yet, and I'm sure it'll be coming soon, but I think it's probably going to be maybe 2024, because Robert specifically said a lot of the other things he needs to do and all the bug fixings are going to be after the holiday. But I gave you this sound sample last time in Banjo Tooie, but go ahead and listen to the absolute amazing sound coming out of this core, and I'll be right back. Again, that sound sample was in Wednesday's video, and I still can't believe I accidentally deleted that, but there's so many other games on the Nintendo 64 library that are still outstanding to test in some of these videos. Something like Duck Dodgers here, definitely not the best platformer on the Nintendo 64, but it is still a fun game that I fondly remember, and this footage is old now because I captured so much of this. Andy D helped me with so much. I was putting up videos so quickly because Robert was iterating so quickly. I found stuff in folders that I meant to put in videos, and I completely didn't have time to because all of that work was basically made obsolete because Robert would come out with another core. For the longest time, we basically weren't even playing Wave Race, but my favorite iteration was seeing the polygon mesh on top of the water so you could actually see how the developers made that. But as of a few days ago, Shindou Edition, the Rumble Pack supported Japanese exclusive release of Wave Race 64, one of the last games to start working, started working again. And you can see here, this just looks like absolute perfection. But there was moments in time where we got huge additions like the CPU cache. On one side, there is no cache on for the CPU. On the other side, it was implemented. It was for a while that we were just running these games at a very low frame rate because the CPU implementation FPGA had no access to the cache. Or something like Banjo Tooie here, when it finally did start running, it would be fast, it would be slow, there'd be all these white lines on the seams of the polygons. But now we can play something like Tooie, and it looks absolutely identical to real hardware. If there's any differences whatsoever, I just cannot spot them. And how crazy is it that I can even make that statement? It was only at the beginning of July that the first retail game, Namco Museum, even started to boot, and any game that required anything from RSP or RDP was non-functional because the code was not in there. Now today, I can say that there's basically no difference between MiSTer FPGA and real hardware on games like Banjo Tooie. That is just 6 months. That is not a long time in any sort of development process, but the idea of recreating an entire Nintendo 64 in FPGA in under 6 months is even more mind-boggling, and that is because Robert developed a cycle-accurate software emulator that doesn't run at full speed, but helped him better understand what needed to be brought over into FPGA. All of the implementation is FPGA specific, but that's basically how he develops his cores. He creates a software emulator in the background to analyze and understand the architecture, then he pivots that over into actual FPGA code. It's the same thing he did with the PlayStation 1 core. And as we fly around the world here of Banjo Tooie, you will notice in some spots this can actually tend to run faster than real hardware. There does still need to be some timing work done to get this to run exactly like it would speed-wise on a real Nintendo 64, but that does leave some optimism towards the end that this core could actually improve the frame rate in some games. Now, as far as the overall logic available to this core, it is hovering right now around 89%, and as I mentioned in a previous video, you cannot use 100% of the logic on any FPGA chip. I mean, technically you could, but the performance hits you're going to take to try to do that are going to be massive, so don't expect this thing to max out the chip. It's just not how it works. But there should be a little wiggle room in the end for Robert to probably surprise us with one more thing, and I can't wait to see what that may be. But the core is definitely still in active development. I've gotten a lot of comments saying, does that mean this is done? It is in no way, shape, or form done, but it is so much better than what it used to be. This was Puzzle Bobble that it used to look like on the core. It was like an Atari 2600 game come to life, but this was some of my favorite stuff. The games that worked but didn't work correctly. Seeing Doom 64 with all these red bounding boxes around the sprites, it wasn't supposed to look like that, but it was a ton of fun. And then of course we got all of the TLB iterations as well. Robert left this towards the end because it was going to make debugging a little bit more difficult, but we went through basically like 6 different TLB cores, all adding different tables and implementations into the core until 100% of the TLB was added. I did that video on Friday, and now every single game that requires some, if not all, of the TLB is available for everyone to play. But getting things like Killer Instinct working, so many people were waiting for this game for so long. It was probably the most requested video for me to test every single core, and it is here. Or being able to play GoldenEye from start to finish on the core is also just a wild accomplishment. It is impossible to state just how impressive this work has been from Robert, and the best part is, it's been fun just chatting with him. If you're over on MiSTer Discord, he's in there making jokes with people, talking about the development process. You get a real insight into how it actually goes to make something like this, and that's so much fun, because honestly, if I'm telling you the truth, I enjoy the process more than the end result. It's amazing that we have something like a Nintendo 64 core that is probably getting close to the finish line sometime in early 2024, but going through all the cores, all the different iterations, and being able to test them and see how everything changes on each revision, that is where the fun in this for me is, and it's so much fun to talk to you guys about it and go through all of the different things. And because I did delete that video, I wanted to say one more time how weird it is that Banjo and Kazooie here keep the information that Bottles has died from both his wife wife and son. It's a little bit of a dark humor moment, and again, I deleted that video, so just lost to time. But back to the progress on the core, I'm excited to see what 2024 brings, because Robert definitely has something up his sleeve. Knowing him, there's probably going to be one more bonus feature that nobody saw coming that is going to blow all our minds. But again, just running around the world of Banjo Tooie here, seeing everything functioning, it is hard to believe that all of these preview videos have all taken place in 2023. I have made 72 of them at this point in time, and they were some of my favorite videos to make. And the idea that that was just since July is still just weird. If you ask me, honestly, I would have said that I started this series in July of 2022, but that would not be true whatsoever. But that's basically how this happened. We went from Robert announcing that he was working on a core, to having a couple tech demos playing, to having the first retail game booting, to have 100% of the retail games booting, as well as 100% of the TLB implementation done in under 6 months. It has been a wild ride. I've been so happy to bring you guys along for it. I've gotten so many good comments, and so many people I know have purchased MiSTers and started testing the core just based on these videos and Robert's work, and that makes me absolutely happy, because the only thing I really care about is knowing that you guys are having fun with this stuff. Helping you discover something new, something to play around with, or something just to watch really does make me happy when I can do it. And don't worry, these testing videos are going nowhere. There's still probably 100 games I've never even featured, and there's definitely updates coming to the core. But that said, I deleted a video, so I made something new, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.